A fully realized character is critical for the reader to have a full experience where they do not disconnect. It feels as though you are transported in and you stay in. Characters that are well developed, they will drive the plot, the story, as in life, rather than the plot just happen. So I'm going to break character development into a few videos, focusing today on your principal character. We have talked on other videos about the fact that these characters will be drawn a lot from you. They could be drawn from somebody else. However, you will still be putting a part of you into that equation as well. It will be your view of a brother, a sister, a friend, an alter ego, let's say. I'm assuming that you, as an author, are definitely a student of human nature. You have observed the behavior and the motivations of others. You have tried to unravel that element of their personality. And I have also challenged you in previous videos to look more deeply, not outward, but inward, to understand yourself better. Do you understand your motivations? Do you understand your fears? Do you understand what drives you, the fuel that you work from? There are contradictions in these characters, and those contradictions are what make up a real character. My principal character is driven by the rigors of science. He is emotionally intelligent and yet somewhat obsessive and relentless. These elements are interesting for the character, and again, these layers of a character are not served up from the beginning. It could be that in the beginning of the novel, you introduce them to an element of your character. So in the early stages of the novel, you would seek to introduce the character in small doses and not directly moving to explain the setup, the location, the time, the place, in addition to introducing the character. In the first novel, my principal character, James Moore, he is driving a commute, a familiar commute, and maybe the familiarity and the slightly boring rhythm and routine makes him slip out of consciousness to some extent, and then he suddenly becomes aware of the terrain, and he realizes that he is in Southern California and how different that is to Southern England. And he reflects on this, then thinks more about the fact that Southern California offered an opportunity, a job, prospects, and a lifestyle that was far better than where he came from, which was Southern England. And so it always feels a little bit ungrateful to be critical of that. However, Southern England was where he was born and where he grew up in his formative years. And as that biological parent, he feels a great attachment to it. He then arrives at the university and collects up some books and walks off to past the security hut. We now know this character is originally from England. but came to Southern California for a job opportunity. He is commuting to a university and collecting up books, and he is probably a professor, teacher, could be a student. That hasn't been revealed yet. But the next exchange will explain more due to the dialogue and the interaction. And it is those interactions that reveal the layers of a character slowly. And that happens as we proceed on. You don't want to serve up a character, all elements of that character, right from the beginning. And the indirectness that I am talking about is the fact that we're establishing a lot of other elements in that opening chapter. We are slowly being introduced to the aspects of the character. How do we look back and find these aspects in history? How do we find the driving elements, the motivations, the likes, the dislikes, the core elements, the historical elements that build and introduce the character? And I would ask you to search back in your own past to parts that you remember. Why did a particular memory register so keenly? It registered because it had I believe, a far-reaching effect, or the messaging in there was universal, and it applied not just to that incident, but to several other incidents, which is why you registered this as important. I'm so a similar of an event, let's say. I'm reminded of one right now. I am in high school. The PE coach is working on assignments, and he comes to me for soccer, and he says that I'm going to make you striker, which is actually a forward position, the actual key forward position, the goal scorers. And he walked towards me in a sort of a meaningful, intense way, finger out, as though really going to emphasize some point. And he said to me, "Do you know why I'm going to make you striker?" I said I did not. And he said, "Because you're not afraid to lose." I had no idea what that meant. I spent, I think, a great number of years trying to decode that, and only really got to the answer of that by realizing that my traits repeated over and over and over again. And then I saw patterns, and in those patterns you see the relevancy and the fact that somebody actually saw that, and you registered that moment because you knew it was significant. The striker position is a precarious one. The team works to get you a ball. The ball is never delivered perfectly. In fact, it's delivered in most cases precariously. You are meant to somehow collect that ball, get into the right position, turn, and then be able to take the shot and hopefully overcome defenders and the goalkeeper to score a goal. I had watched other strikers, and in most cases the pressure of this got to them, and they passed the ball back, passed the ball over, let somebody else take that shot so that the responsibility did not fall on them. I took the shot, no matter how crazy that was, no matter how wild that shot was, missed, and then immediately said, "Sorry about that." The team went into a great sigh of disappointment, and then we had to work again to get into that position once again. But I never stopped taking that shot, never stopped trying to do that. And it didn't seem to interfere or disturb me that the teammates were always going to be disappointed unless I performed perfectly each and every time. I see this as an element that maybe that somewhat defined the character, defined a specific element of the character that then I created as the central character. And this is what I'm asking you to look for. Look for those elements, those story pieces, those situations that occurred in your past. Look for not just yours or an event that you witnessed that was significant and somehow you recorded. You recorded this and kept it. Maybe you kept it because it was confusing. Maybe it took years to fully understand it. Those elements are important. We want to search deeply. We want to try and uncover these pieces because this will give you a fully realized character. A character where you can break down all of the driving forces, the internal logic, the way the character would act and react under certain circumstances. These tiny nuanced elements, they don't just define them professionally, it defines them as a personality personally as well. And I want you to search for those. If you are in a position of creating an alter ego or basing it on a character that you know and you have worked with or know personally, you must drill down into understanding. Look at every aspect, every decision that is made, their internal rationale, how they think, how they feel, the relationships they have, friendships, rivalries, and why. Why do you believe they act the way they do? Your protagonist has a mystery, a story to unpick, a journey to travel. And that protagonist is important. You must develop that character and have a very complete image and idea behind them. You must not just have their actions and reactions now, but you must also draw on the fact that there is a history and how that formed and shaped them. C.S. Lewis mentioned that he lost his mother when he was younger, and this was a devastating blow for him. He avoided close relationships after that because you could get hurt, and he didn't want to put himself in that position again. James Moore, my character, is somewhat doing that exact same thing. C.S. Lewis called it safety or suffering. The moment that you get close to a person, you are condemning yourself to suffering. Because if something happens to them, you suffer the consequences. So he lived in an isolated, protective area of safety. But in the end, is that really living? And the answer is, it isn't. So James is somewhat, he is doing that exact same thing. He is reluctant for relationships, but has friendships. And that element is in there. There is a friend, and the friend's wife is always matchmaking because she feels that he needs somebody. He should have a partner because he is on his own. So these elements are integrated in, and you have a clear understanding of the source of this, where it came from, how it is manifesting itself in the present, and how it occurred in the past. why that motivation is where it is. I am going to have you go to your journal and work on those elements. Work on the questions that you need to ask about your character. If this character, this protagonist, is largely based on yourself or based on someone else, you must be asking enough questions to get a three-dimensional view of that character. Again, we will not be serving all of this up. We will be having the story unfold, and your character will be not just traveling through the story, but we will be exposing layers of that character. So the questions I want you to think about are the depth, complexity, the friendships, rivalries, consistency of the character, that internal logic, how the character evolves, how the character struggles, how he or she learns or sometimes regresses. I want you to also think about the core traits, strengths, weaknesses of the character. We want to understand motivations, what they want and why, their fears, their flaws, their imperfections, their contradictions. You should understand as well their voice and their presence. What language do they use? How they speak? How they frame sentences? How they communicate? The presence, the physical presence, how they conduct themselves. These elements are important because they will be described and they will be realized more thoroughly when you have other characters interacting with them. And bringing those characters together, if you've done the job right, those characters will literally have a life of their own. You will have clear ideas of them, and the interactions of them will bring forth more of the story, more of the character understanding, more development. Taking the time to do this properly and to build this out and investing into it. We want to understand the history of the character, the backstory, the shaping events, which we talked about, the growing up, the wounds, who do they love, like, hate, dislike, why? Doubts, traumas, explored. These questions should be asked. How did they change then as a result of this story? So this brings in the character changes that occurred during this. So this experience, this story, is going to cause an arc in the character. And that arc is a transformation or a change that occurs due to this effect that the story has on them. So you want to think about their growth, transformation. Did it test their morality, their limits, their decision making? So we're doing a lot of self-reflection and understand why we act the way we do. Good luck with this. Work on your central character, and I'm going to talk about other characters in another video. But otherwise, thank you for joining me. Bye for now. I'll see you on the next one.